So with Dune being delayed until 2021, there is now a long period of time where I can talk about the film and potential elements which it will adapt from Frank Herbert's novel. Having finished the book recently, one topic which has been on my mind and something which many of my subscribers have asked me over the last few months surrounds how the film will end. I think there are many paths that director Denis Villeneuve could take, and it will be interesting to see how he approaches it. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the potential ending for Denis Villeneuve's Dune, and how this could link in and set up the second film if the first one is of course successful. There will be spoilers in this video, so if you have not read Dune or want to go into the film without any knowledge of this ending, then I would recommend watching one of my other videos. Before I get into it though, if you want to see much more videos on Dune leading up to its release date, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoy this video, remember to give it a like rating. Without further ado, let's discuss the possible ending for Dune. Now, as we already know, Denis Villeneuve has previously discussed that his Dune film will be the first of two parts if the first film does well. Now, obviously at this point, we don't quite know how Dune will perform, especially when considering the current issues taking place in the world. But if it does become possible for a sequel, then Denis is looking to break apart Frank Herbert's first novel and have each film focusing on a separate element of the story. The director has stated that his current plans involve the first film being about Paul's rise to leadership in the midst of his family's downfall, and the second film aiming to show him as that leader which he becomes. Having read Dune recently, the novel is packed with so much that it can be developed across the course of a single film, so having it as two parts, especially considering the events that take place, actually seems rather fitting. Denis as a director also tends to really hone in on certain themes and atmospheric filmmaking that really drives across to the audience the messages that he wants them to concentrate on, and this approach would only benefit from that. But with these details listed, it makes us as Dune fans wonder what the potential ending could be for the first film and how it could fit into the brief descriptions we have of Paul's journey throughout them. The first possible ending, which I think is the least likely of the two that I will list in this video, concerns Paul during the middle of Book 3 and the arrival of the Emperor. During this section, Paul has been in a coma-like trance for weeks, with Jessica doing everything she can for him, and she has even summoned Chani due to an inner desire. At this point, Chani realises that Paul drank some of the spice drug and asks Jessica to quickly transform some of the drug into a safe format so that she can administer it to Paul. But before she can do so, Paul wakes up after changing the drug himself. He grabs Jessica's hand and demands that she show him the inward place where you cannot enter, at which no Reverend Mother ever looks. Paul then speaks of two ancient forces, one that gives and one that takes, the former being the main force of women and the latter of men, and only Paul can balance the two forces. What we learn in this sequence surrounds how Paul's ability to predict the future seems more plausible, though less realistic than Jessica's memories of Reverend Mothers. While it is unclear exactly how and why Paul is able to see the future whenever he consumes too much spice, it is conceivable that it is due to a heightened ability for calculation. Like a mentat, Paul simply calculates an amazing number of variables and decides which events have the highest probability. However, this theory does not account for things that Paul could not possibly know, such as Fade Rorfa's name, or that Aaliyah would come to be known as Saint Aaliyah of the Knife. In Jessica's and Paul's cases, it is probably easier to accept the idea that they have magical powers, something spiritually or supernaturally based, rather than based in science. We also gather from this sequence that Paul's differentiation along gender lines of the forces speaks to the intricate balance between women and men in Dune. Each gender is like a force in the universe, and neither has total power over the other, since neither can face the other without losing something of itself. Each force, like each gender, cannot exist without the other opposing force. Paul, however, exists above this interplay of forces, and as the Kwisatz Haderach, he is the only one who can balance the logical and the intuitive, and the male and the female forces. For example, Paul can use the voice to convince the Fremen to help fight the Sardaukar, but he also must win them over using logic. Paul's mastery of both the female and male forces means that he can become more powerful than any other human being. After this important section in Book 3, we also begin to see the arrival of several ships landing behind Arrakis's rocky shield wall. The Emperor has come to Arrakis along with Baron Harkonnen and 5 legions of Sardaukar. Now on paper, this scene does sound cinematically perfect to set up an upcoming war and also develop Paul's balancing of the forces, but in my opinion it does come a bit too late in the final book, and there is much development before this which works into Villeneuve's description of the potential second film. But the ending that I think is most likely, and one which allows this development to happen later on down the line, surrounds the end of Book 2, which is entitled Muad'Dib. During the end of the second book in the original novel, the Fremen hold a ceremony welcoming Jessica into the clan as their Reverend Mother and replacing their old one, who will soon die. As part of the ceremony, Jessica is required to drink a strange liquid from a sack, and using her Bene Gesserit powers, Jessica turns her mind inward and chemically transforms the poison into a safe liquid. The liquid in the sack touches her mouth, and a chemical reaction spreads through the sack, making the liquid safe for Jessica to drink. While the ceremony continues, Jessica feels trapped within herself. The dying Reverend Mother comes before Jessica, embracing her and allows her spirit to be absorbed into Jessica's body and mind. With the Mother's spirit comes the entire history of the Bene Gesserit and humanity itself, back thousands of years even before the rise of the Bene Gesserit. At the same time, the unborn child inside Jessica is flooded with the same memories and awareness, and only Jessica's love prevents the child from going insane. Jessica tells the Fremen to drink the water from the sack so that they may enjoy the heightened awareness that will come from the melange-like liquid. It's a sequence that involves the Fremen, Jessica, Paul and Chani being connected through the taking of this spice drug, and we begin to gather a sense of the revolution at play come the third book. It all ends with Chani leading Paul away from the ceremony, and they presumably make love. But here, the spice drug's effect on both Jessica and Paul raises their awareness to unnatural dimensions. In the case of Jessica, the drug allows her to converse with and then absorb the spirit of the previous Reverend Mother. At the same time, Jessica incorporates the spirits of all Reverend Mothers before her and absorbs all their memories. The spice drug in such a pure form allows Paul to see the unpredictable turmoil of his future more clearly than ever before. In particular, the melange's effects suggest the delicacy of Paul's balance between two sides. He sees the Harkonnens and the Emperor and the Bene Gesserit on one side, and the Fremen on the other, with himself walking a careful line between them. Melange also heightens the awareness of the unborn child inside Jessica, suggesting that Aaliyah will also have to cope with superhuman powers. Both of Jessica's children, Aaliyah and Paul, do not experience a normal childhood. Even in the womb, Aaliyah is conscious of herself and her place in the history of the universe. She is never an innocent child, but instead, she is born with the knowledge of all the sins, problems, and pains of the past. As a result of Aaliyah's precocious behaviour, others see her as unnatural or evil. But much of this is explored and understood more clearly at the beginning of Book 3, as there is about 2 years between the end of Book 2 and the start of the next one. This seems the most logical place to end the first film, as it would not only end that chapter of events, but it would also link into what we were saying about the director's comments at the start of this video. This is the moment that Paul begins to fully transition into a leader, and he is one of the Fremen. In Book 3, we then start to see him lead the Fremen forward as a prophetic leader amongst the events that happen. This final scene in Book 2 is not only fitting in terms of timeline, the narrative and character, but also one which could be well adapted within Denis Villeneuve's directing style. I expect something that visually conveys this sequence and the experience with which the characters in the Fremen ceremony are having. It would really convey the thoughts and emotions described in the book and end the first film in an interesting way to set up the sequel. But they were my thoughts towards the potential ending for Denis Villeneuve's Dune. I do think that there are multiple routes which the director and his writing team could take, especially considering Villeneuve's filmmaking style, which has developed quite drastically over his last few films. He tends to end his films with a powerful message, rather than approaching them with something too dramatic, so I predict he will use a scene which doesn't just tease what's to come in the second film, but also one which summarises the story told in the first. We'll have to see, but having read the book recently, I'm extremely excited to witness the direction that Denis Villeneuve will utilise. Let me know down below in the comment section what you personally think towards the ending of Dune and your thoughts on how this will set up the potential second film if the first one is of course successful. For more videos surrounding Dune leading up to its release in 2021, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to give it a like rating. I will be covering news and topics for Dune whenever new information comes out, alongside starting my Road to Dune series in the coming weeks, so look out for all of these uploads. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.